Good morning, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, and today we're going to take a look at the Pathfinder Knife Shop's Grizzly. Big hunk of steel, nice knife. Let's come on in and take a look at some of the specs. Okay, so we've got a 3/16 of an inch thick piece of 1095 high carbon steel with a spot on heat treat. We are 10.5 inches in overall length, 90-degree spine, good and sharp, does a fine job of scraping. I'll show you that in just a minute. We've got a 6-inch blade and a satin finish, Scandinavian grind. The grind is brought up just right for the thickness of the blade. The scales are in walnut, and the weight comes in at 9.4 ounces. The sheath that I chose to go along with it is just a basic bushcraft sheath. Good fit and finish, nothing fancy, just a good solid sheath with good quality leather, finished off very well, and it fits that knife very well. Just the right amount of handle sticking out for a knife of this size. The blade profile and shape of this knife is a little bit different than what I'm used to. Usually on a clip point or a Bowie knife, this area here is actually taken down and then the point sweeps back up. Or it's a cut and it's tapered on either side to either give you a sharp cutting area up here for stabbing and piercing, or it's ground out to where it's a fake sharpened edge up here. This knife does not do that. They simply come down the spine of the knife and then just cut that off, and they left the full thickness here. And what that does is it gives you a very substantial point here, so that when you get into wanting to do something where you're utilizing your point in that sideways motion, it really gives you the full strength of that thickness of that metal until you get right down to where your Scandinavian grind comes up. And even in that area, you can see the beefiness of that piece of metal there, and it really works well. The advantage to that is you get more of a point than you would if they had to just continue that radius up to that straight spine like I like on so many of my knives. But this adds almost like a butcher knife characteristic, that when I was processing some game, you can lay that over and press down on the handle once you're underneath the skin, and it lifts the skin. This part of the knife rides along the meat, and if you keep that tip up, it raises that hide up and helps you cut that from the inside out, which is the most efficient way of doing it, because you save on your edge retention that way, because you're not cutting through all the dirt and the actual hair follicles. Will dull your knife a lot faster than you would if you were cutting from the outside in. So the overall design for a sheath style knife is laid out very well. I was very impressed with the way they did their tip. And to be honest with you, I used their other knife. This is the Black Bear, which is a smaller version of this. I'll do a separate review on this knife, but it's in 1/8 of an inch and a little bit smaller. The handle is a little bit smaller, but you're talking about a smaller blade. This one, the handle really fills your hand, a little bit more beefier than what I've had on some of the other Pathfinder knives, but I really like it, and you need that for this larger knife. But these two used in combination together as a pair has been very nice for processing game, and I'll actually include some shots and a little bit of that processing taking place here. Okay, today we have two knives that we're going to process our deer with, and these knives I thought would make a great companion set for hunting. And we have the Black Bear by Pathfinder Knife Shop, and also the Grizzly from the Pathfinder Knife Shop. So the real test of these knives, of carrying them out on a hunt, is to find out how they would process up game. So we have a nice deer here today, and I'll throw in a couple of shots of us using these knives, and we'll see exactly how they perform. Okay, both tenderloins removed. The Grizzly did extremely well, especially for a knife of that size. Just handled itself very well. The Black Bear did an excellent job, as good as any camp knife that I've ever used processing out my tenderloin like that. So we've got two very usable blades here as far as butchering your game. Okay, well, you guys know I'm not a big knife baton fan, but I do think it's important that we know what our knife will do, and it is a good test of edge retention. So this is not the first time I've done this with this knife, but let me show you what she'll do. Hit the tripod there. I don't think you would have any trouble at all making a one-stick fire or going out in an emergency situation where it was wet and you needed to break down to some of the inner fibers where it was dry on the piece of wood and worry about damaging this blade. Like I said, that's not the first piece of baton wood that this knife has been through. And there is no rolling, no chipping, no damage at all. And part of that is just because of the grind angle of how it lifts up. And when it sets in there, yes, your edge is taking a bit of a hit when it first enters that wood, but once it gets in, there's enough blade there that your edge is not actually coming in contact with the wood itself. The blade is thick enough that it's opening that up, and it just batons out very well. As far as cutting and workability of this blade in wood, it really makes a nice sheath knife. Once again, I think it has to do a lot with the angle that they've put this Scandinavian grind on. When you start talking about a knife this big and then you want to start throwing up some small curls like this for your fire, or even finer, that can get a little challenging with a big blade because of the angle of the grind. But I had no learning curve to deal with at all with this knife. I mean, I picked it up and I was able to start feathering right off the bat like this. So that just lends itself to the testimony of good usability and a good blade design. Another part of this blade that we find important, especially here in the eastern woodlands, is that 90-degree spine. And we like to process out fat wood, and we carry it in sticks, and we find it out in the woods all over the place around here. But being able to use that 90-degree spine to process your fat wood, to scrape it, to get these what we call fine fuzzies that will accept the heat of a ferro rod or lighter or whatever your preferred method is. We use ferro rods quite a bit, but this acts almost like a cabinet scraper, and you can get down there and process that stuff off in a very quick manner, build that up in a little pile, and then in the event that you lost your scraper for your ferro rod, I like to be able to use that 90-degree spine to start my fire. Ferro rod is by far our choice of emergency fire starter, and we don't want to have to be sitting here striking on this thing all day. We want to be able to get in here and remove some good metal. We'll pin that down, get my knife at the right angle, throw some material down in there, and get me a fire started right away and go on with the rest of my camp chores. 90-degree spine is razor sharp on this thing, very nicely done. But with the thickness of the metal again, you can put your thumb on the back of it when you're doing these push cuts like this, and it's not uncomfortable at all. So that worry that you have with a 90-degree spine that it's going to dig into your finger because you have such a large platform here, takes that worry right away. The more versatility you can get out of your knife, the better off you're going to be. And in the event that you did get caught out and you had to spend those couple of days out, away from civilization, or you lost your fire kit and you had the ability to make your first primitive fire and create some char, I would like to think that I can use my knife as a steel for a flint and steel fire. So I've got a piece of char here, and I've got me a good rock, and I'm going to see if I can use this knife as my steel for a flint and steel fire. It's a good test of our heat treat. It's a good test of the versatility of your knife. And there we go, just that fast. Now you talk about 1095 with a proper heat treat. That right there is a very good test of it. Versatility in your knife. That's awesome. Now I don't know about you, but as an outdoorsman, when I go out into the woods, there is not anything I like more than being able to cook while I'm out in camp. And your knife that you're going to strap on your side, that's going to be your sheath knife, your belt knife, should also be able to process your dinner. And you know my test for that, I like to do the bacon sliceability test. If I can get in there with some good bacon or hog jaw, which is what this is, and give me some nice even thin slices and cut through that thick skin, and it looks like it came off of a slicing machine like that, I'm going to tell you what, just one more way your knife can be versatile. PKS Grizzly, where do I see it shining through? Where do I see its purpose really laying in my arsenal of knives? Well, I'm going to tell you, if you want a good quality sheath knife, something that you can strap on your side for any of your outdoor adventures, and if you're out there and you happen to be able to take some game, you need something for your survivability, a larger bushcraft knife, something you can use around camp, but yet is not too heavy to strap to your side, is a good large camp knife. It's going to be real hard to beat the Grizzly. The fit, the finish, the heat treat, everything just screams that this knife is a great design, especially since they have redesigned or gone back to the way that they have redone this. I'll call it a drop point. It's really changed my opinion on that design of a blade. And like I said earlier in the video, pairing it up with the Black Bear, a smaller version of this knife in 1/8 of an inch for my camp needs, and this one to strap onto my belt when I go out, this is going to be a pair that I'm really going to enjoy using this hunting season. Hey guys, thanks for joining me for this video. I certainly enjoyed bringing it to you. Until next time, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. God bless.